Hi there, it's Richard Shepherd from LeaseOptionsMastery.com, the site I run with my two partners Hanif Khan and Shimon Rudik. I'm just going to answer this question, as it's a very popular question with property investors wanting to use the more creative property investment strategies such as lease options. And the question's this: why on earth would a seller give you an option rather than just rent the property out themselves? Don't they know that property prices double every 7 to 10 years? Now the answer actually is a simple one, and comes down to the seller's problem. Now if the seller contacts you, they must have a problem. They're looking to sell their house, they call an estate agent. Everybody knows that. If they're calling you, then there's likely to be an underlying problem. And your job as the property investor is to work out what that problem is. For instance, it could be that they're in arrears, paying 2 mortgages and ready to hand the keys back to the bank. It could be that the mortgage payments and council tax is just killing them. A clued-up investor might think that this is an opportunity to do something here. They may be able to do a lease option. So your job as the property investor is to work out very quickly what the seller's trigger points are. Remember, when you're ready to move home, it's a stressful situation, and one that's often emotional. We know that emotions come in 2 forms: pain and pleasure. So in turn, the pain that could be affecting them is the monthly mortgage payments that are literally killing them. Perhaps they're being threatened with repossession, which is very stressful. Perhaps the property is a pain in the neck. Perhaps it's always being broken into. Perhaps their credit rating is being threatened by having to continue to make these payments. But that alone actually isn't enough. Also, the trigger points may be about pleasure. We went to see someone who was starting a new business venture in Australia. They had their kids in a great school over there. The business venture was just about to earn a ton of money. They're very excited, but they just hadn't sold the damned house. They wanted to take the opportunity. Perhaps they're just about to hand the keys back to the bank, but they can see that their credit rating would be hit, and so this way of selling the house is just a hell of a lot better for them. So what you're trying to establish is what it gives them to sell their house this way, and where they stand to alleviate the pain and also to gain pleasure. Now, the use of these 2 concepts in negotiation is very, very powerful. You need to find out what is important to them. Where most investors and even gurus trip up is that they'll only establish what the pain trigger point is, and they'll forget about the pleasure. Actually, what you're looking to do is to satisfy both of these criteria, as your conversion rates will literally go through the roof. You'll then leave them with a no-brainer choice. If it is a no-brainer, of course. Now, we don't suggest trying to manipulate situations so that it only suits you. You have to be ethical and strive for a win-win situation. So that's a situation that it works for you, but of course it also works for them as well. So back to the title. Why don't they rent the property out themselves? The answer is actually very simple. With the thousands of students that we've taught, we know that this question will only ever be asked by investors. The fact is that because the investor is interested in the equity and the cash flow of the property, often the owner is motivated by something quite different, something emotional, such as the need to escape pain and gain pleasure. The fact is that there are 2 types of owners. The first is the owner-occupiers, who perhaps never ever wanted to be a landlord in the first place. All they were doing is living in the property themselves. The idea of managing a property fills them with dread. The second criteria is landlords, and landlords themselves break down into 2 categories, if they're going to suit a lease option. The first is the retiring landlord. So this is the experienced landlord who's by now quite tired with the whole process. And the beauty here is that they may have more than one property to take over. So with one negotiation, you can actually wrap up quite a few deals. The other category are reluctant landlords. Now, they may be people who have inherited a property and perhaps started renting but really had no interest or feel for the property itself. Now, this alone can lend itself open to different strategies for you once you understand what the nature of the pain that they're trying to escape is, and also what the nature of the pleasure is that they're actually trying to achieve. Now, the negotiation points from this side really isn't rocket science. The problem is some of the lease option gurus try to dress the negotiation up as something really complicated that you've got to know complex neuro-linguistic programming algorithms to achieve. The fact is, all you need to do is to address what they've already told you about. So don't go into the sometimes admittedly complex mechanics of lease options because you've just been on some fancy workshop. Just bring it down to layman's terms. Highlight how you're going to help them solve their problem, and concentrate on how they'd feel without the pain, but with the pleasure. What we really need to do is to come back to that very old-fashioned maxim, but one that still works, which is to keep it simple, stupid. Now, the whole principle of win-win using lease options is really simple. The whole thing is geared around the fact that both you and your seller are looking for different things. You're not both looking for the equity in the house or the cash flow. They want to move. You want the capital growth and the cash flow. Therefore, it's possible for you to construct a win-win situation. It all helps the whole thing if you use solicitors who are familiar with the lease options. We use MS Law Solicitors. Google it. And do make sure that you have full authority when you're negotiating these, as it really does help. If you like this video and you'd like access to more videos, then do join our community at www.facebook.com/lease options mastery. There you can get access to many more resources about lease options. This is Richard Shepherd. Happy hunting.